My name is Emily Carter, and for 12 years, I believed I was living a beautiful love story. I was 26 when I met Daniel. At that time, I worked in a small publishing company in Chicago. My life was simple. I lived alone in a tiny apartment with old wooden floors that creaked whenever I walked across them. Every morning looked exactly the same. I would wake up at 6, make myself a cup of coffee, and sit beside the window before leaving for work. I wasn't unhappy, but I was lonely. Most of my friends were getting married, having children, and posting pictures of their happy lives. Meanwhile, I spent my weekends reading books and watching movies alone. I had accepted that maybe love wasn't meant for everyone. Then one rainy evening, everything changed. I had just left work when I realized I had forgotten my umbrella. The rain was pouring heavily. People were running in every direction. I stood under the building entrance, wondering how I would get home. Then a man suddenly appeared beside me. He held an umbrella and smiled. "Looks like we're both trapped," he said. I laughed softly. He had kind eyes, dark hair, and one of those smiles that immediately make you feel comfortable. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Emily." We stood there talking for nearly 20 minutes. I don't even remember what we discussed. I only remember laughing. It felt nice. Really nice. Before leaving, he asked for my number. I hesitated. I had never been the type of woman who gave her number to strangers, but something about him felt safe, so I gave it to him. That same night, he sent a message. "I enjoyed talking to you today. Maybe we can have coffee sometime." I smiled. I didn't know then that one simple text message would change the entire direction of my life. 3 days later, we had our first date. Then another, and another. Everything happened naturally. Daniel was patient, attentive, kind. He remembered little things about me. He remembered my favorite coffee, my favorite flowers, even my favorite author. No man had ever paid that much attention to me. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I felt important. 6 months later, he proposed. We were having dinner beside the lake. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink. He reached into his pocket. Then he knelt in front of me. "Emily," he said softly, "I don't want another day without you." I started crying immediately. I said yes. It was the easiest decision I had ever made. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. It was small and simple, just close friends and family. I remember standing beside him and thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. I couldn't stop smiling. Neither could he. Everyone kept telling us how perfect we looked together, and honestly, we did. The first years of our marriage felt like a dream. We bought a small house, painted the walls together, argued over furniture, cooked dinner together every night. Sometimes we danced in the kitchen while old songs played on the radio. Life wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful. And peace felt like happiness. A few years later, we started trying to have children. At first, it was exciting. Then months passed, nothing happened. Then another year, still nothing. Eventually, doctors gave us terrible news. Having children would be difficult. I was devastated. I cried for days. I felt broken. I felt like my body had failed me. But Daniel hugged me tightly. "It's okay," he said. "We have each other." I remember looking into his eyes. I believed every word. I loved him even more for saying it. I didn't know he was lying. I didn't know that somewhere else in the city, another woman was kissing him goodbye every morning. I didn't know another little girl called him daddy. I didn't know another little boy waited for him every weekend. I didn't know my husband was already living the life I had always dreamed about. And perhaps that's the cruelest thing about betrayal. It doesn't happen in one moment. It happens slowly, silently, right in front of you while you're still calling it love. Every morning I woke up at 6. I made coffee. Daniel preferred his with 1 spoon of sugar and a little cream. After 12 years of marriage, I could prepare it without thinking. He would sit at the kitchen table, read the news on his phone, and thank me for breakfast. Then he would kiss my forehead and leave for work, every single day. I used to think routine was boring. But when you truly love someone, routine becomes comfort. It becomes home. I never imagined that one ordinary afternoon would destroy everything I believed about my life. It was a Wednesday. The weather was gloomy, and heavy rain had started falling outside. I had taken the day off from work because I wasn't feeling well. After lunch, I decided to organize our home office. The room was a mess. Old documents were scattered everywhere. There were boxes filled with papers, old receipts, and electronics that we no longer used. Daniel hated throwing things away. Every time I suggested cleaning the room, he would say, "Maybe we'll need it someday." I smiled to myself as I opened one of the drawers. Inside, I found several old notebooks, some photographs, and an old smartphone. I recognized it immediately. Daniel had stopped using that phone years ago. I almost placed it back in the drawer. Then suddenly it vibrated. I jumped. The screen lit up. A text message appeared. I wasn't trying to invade his privacy. Honestly, I wasn't. I only glanced at the screen because the phone had startled me. But the words I saw made my entire body freeze. "Dad, where are you? Mom is worried." I blinked. Then I looked again. The message was still there. "Dad." I felt confused. My mind immediately searched for explanations. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe one of his relatives had saved his contact under another name. Maybe there was some misunderstanding. I put the phone down, then it vibrated again. Another message. "Please don't forget tonight. Emma is so excited for her birthday." Emma? Who was Emma? I felt my heartbeat speeding up. Suddenly, the room seemed smaller. I picked up the phone again. My hands were shaking. For several seconds, I simply stared at the screen. I remember saying out loud, "No, this doesn't make sense." Then another message arrived. "Can you pick up the cake before coming home?" Coming home. The words hit me like ice. I couldn't breathe. I sat down in the chair. Daniel was at work, or at least I thought he was. The phone remained in my hands. I knew I should put it away. I knew I should wait and ask him about it. But something deep inside me already knew. Sometimes our hearts understand the truth before our minds can accept it. I looked at the phone again. It wasn't locked. Apparently, he had never expected anyone to turn it on. I opened the messages, and my entire world shattered. There were hundreds of conversations, thousands of messages, years of communication. Photos, videos, family pictures, birthday celebrations, vacations, school events, Christmas mornings. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then I saw him, Daniel, my husband, smiling, holding a little girl in his arms. Another picture. Daniel standing beside a boy. Another. Daniel wrapping his arm around a woman. The four of them were smiling at the camera, like a perfect family. I stared at the picture for what felt like an hour. The date was from 11 years ago. I opened another photograph. 10 years ago. Another. 9 years ago. Then 8, 7, 6, 5. I kept scrolling. Each photograph felt like a knife. I wasn't looking at an affair. I wasn't looking at a temporary relationship. I was looking at another life. A complete life. A family. My husband had another family, and judging from the dates, he had been living this double life for almost our entire marriage. I dropped the phone. It landed on the carpet. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. I couldn't feel anything. The room suddenly became quiet. The rain outside seemed distant. I remember hearing my own breathing. Fast, uneven. I wanted to wake up. I wanted someone to tell me this wasn't real. I picked up the phone again. I kept searching. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping to find evidence that everything had been a misunderstanding. Instead, I found more lies. The woman's name was Claire. The little girl was Emma. The boy was Noah. I read messages where they talked about school, family dinners, vacations, and birthdays. I found videos. Daniel teaching Noah how to ride a bicycle. Daniel helping Emma blow out birthday candles. Daniel hugging Claire on Christmas morning. I watched every second. My tears wouldn't stop. Then I found something that completely broke me. A video from 6 years ago. Emma looked around 5 years old. She was sitting on Daniel's lap. She asked him, "Daddy, do you love us forever?" Daniel smiled. Then he kissed her forehead. "Always, always." I closed the video immediately. I started crying so hard that my chest hurt. Always. I remembered something. 6 years ago, I had been sitting in a doctor's office. The doctor had just explained that my chances of becoming a mother were extremely low. I was devastated. I had cried all night. I thought I had failed my husband. Daniel held my hands and told me something I would never forget. "It's okay. We don't need children. I only need you." I believed him. The entire time, he already had children. He already had a family. He already had everything. I was crying because I thought I couldn't give him something he wanted. Meanwhile, he was secretly living the life I thought I had taken away from him. The cruelty of that realization destroyed me. I sat on the floor for nearly 2 hours. I don't remember moving. I don't remember thinking, I only remember pain. Around 6 o'clock, I heard a car outside. Daniel was home. I quickly turned off the phone. I wiped my tears. I couldn't let him know. Not yet. I placed the phone exactly where I had found it. Then I went into the kitchen. A few seconds later, he entered. He smiled. "Hey, sweetheart." I looked at him. The same face, the same eyes. The same smile I had loved for 12 years. Suddenly, he looked like a stranger. He walked over and kissed my forehead. I almost stepped back. "How was your day?" he asked. I couldn't answer. I just stared at him. He looked concerned. "Emily, are you okay?" I forced myself to nod. "I'm just tired." He smiled gently. "Then let's order dinner tonight." Order dinner. As if nothing had happened. As if my entire life had not just collapsed. I watched him remove his jacket. I watched him loosen his tie. I watched him move around our kitchen. And for the first time in 12 years, I saw a liar. Not a husband. Not a partner. Not my best friend. A liar. A man who had looked into my eyes every day and hidden an entire family from me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at him. I wanted answers. But another feeling slowly appeared inside me. Silence. A strange, terrifying silence, because I realized something. I didn't know this man at all, and if I confronted him now, he would simply lie again. So I smiled. A small smile. The kind of smile people wear when their hearts have already broken. Then I said, "You're right, let's order dinner." He smiled back. He had no idea that everything had changed. No idea that his secret had been discovered. No idea that the woman sitting across from him at dinner had just become someone completely different, because that afternoon, I had stopped being his trusting wife. And I had started becoming the woman who would uncover every single lie he had ever told me. That night, I barely slept. Daniel lay beside me, breathing peacefully. I stared at the ceiling. Every few minutes, I looked at him. I kept asking myself the same question. Who are you? For 12 years, I had shared a home, a bed, and my entire heart with this man. Yet suddenly, I realized I knew almost nothing about him. The person sleeping beside me wasn't the husband I had loved. He was a stranger wearing my husband's face. Around 3 in the morning, I quietly got out of bed. I went downstairs and sat in the living room. The house felt different. Everything looked the same, but somehow it wasn't. The photographs on the walls seemed like lies. Our wedding picture looked like a scene from a movie. 2 people smiling. 2 people making promises. Only one of them had actually meant those promises. I cried again. I didn't want to. I was exhausted from crying. But grief doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives. I remembered our first date, our wedding. The nights we stayed awake talking about our future. The times I defended him whenever someone criticized him. I had trusted him completely. I had loved him completely. And now every memory felt poisoned. Morning came slowly. I heard Daniel getting ready for work. I quickly washed my face before he came downstairs. "Good morning," he said. I looked up. He smiled. I forced myself to smile back. "Morning." He sat down and drank his coffee. I watched him carefully. Did he feel guilty? Did he ever look at me and remember his other family? Did he think about them while eating breakfast with me? The questions kept coming. He finished his coffee. Then he kissed my forehead. "I'll be home late tonight." Important meeting, important meeting. The words almost made me laugh. I nodded. "Okay." A few moments later, he left. The second the front door closed, my smile disappeared. I ran upstairs. I opened the drawer. The old phone was still there. I turned it on again. This time, I wasn't searching for explanations. I was searching for the truth. I spent hours reading messages. The more I read, the worse it became. Claire wasn't some secret girlfriend. She believed she was Daniel's wife. She called him her husband. She talked about anniversaries. She talked about their future. She thanked him for being a wonderful father. I sat there, completely stunned. He hadn't lied to one woman. He had lied to two. He had created two marriages, two homes. Two separate worlds. How? I couldn't understand it. How could one person keep such a huge secret for 12 years? Then I started finding clues. The business trips, the overnight meetings, the conferences, the weekends when he claimed work was overwhelming. Everything suddenly made sense. He wasn't traveling for business. He was simply living his other life. I opened the photo gallery. There were thousands of pictures. One photograph made my heart stop. Daniel and Claire were standing beside a Christmas tree. Emma and Noah were wearing matching pajamas. The date was December 25th. I immediately remembered that Christmas. Daniel had told me his company needed him in another state. I had spent Christmas completely alone. I had eaten dinner by myself. I had cried because I missed him. Meanwhile, he had been opening presents with his children. I covered my mouth and sobbed. Then another memory appeared. Our 10th anniversary. Daniel had forgotten it. He called me from another city and apologized. He promised we would celebrate later. I remembered how disappointed I had been. Now I knew why he forgot. Because that same day, he had attended Emma's school performance. There were pictures, videos. He was sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. I stared at the screen. A strange feeling filled my chest. I wasn't angry at the children. I couldn't be, they were innocent. I wasn't even angry at Claire. She looked happy, trusting, completely unaware, just like me. No. All of my anger belonged to one person. Daniel. By afternoon, I felt emotionally numb. I had cried so much that I had no tears left. I made myself tea and sat by the window. The rain had stopped. People were walking outside. Cars were passing. The world looked normal. I couldn't understand how everything around me remained the same while my entire life had fallen apart. Then my phone rang. It was my friend Sarah. "Hey Em, want to grab dinner tonight?" I almost said yes. I wanted to talk to someone. I wanted someone to tell me what to do, but I couldn't. I wasn't ready. "Maybe another day," I said softly. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. "Just tired." After hanging up, I realized something. I was completely alone with this secret. No one knew, not my friends. Not my family, not even the other woman, only me. The thought felt suffocating. I needed answers. I needed to see them. That evening Daniel called. "I'm running late." "Of course you are," I thought. I knew exactly where he was. After hanging up, I grabbed my car keys. I didn't have a plan. I simply drove. I had found the address in one of the messages. My hands shook the entire way. After 40 minutes, I reached a quiet neighborhood. Beautiful houses lined the street. Trees surrounded the sidewalks. Children were playing outside. Then I saw the address. I parked across the street. I couldn't move. There it was, the house, his other home, the place where another version of my husband existed. The front yard was filled with flowers. A bicycle lay near the porch. Children's shoes sat beside the door. It looked warm, happy, lived in. Then a car pulled into the driveway. Daniel, my breathing stopped. He got out carrying several shopping bags. A few seconds later, the front door opened. A little girl came running outside. Emma. I recognized her immediately. She threw herself into his arms. He picked her up and laughed. I had not heard him laugh like that in years. Then Noah came outside. Daniel hugged him too. Moments later, Claire appeared. She smiled. Daniel kissed her. Kissed her as if she were his wife, as if I didn't exist. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. The pain was unbearable. I watched them walk inside together. A family, a complete family. And suddenly I understood something horrifying. I wasn't the center of his life. I was simply another chapter, maybe even a convenience. A person who paid bills, cooked meals, waited for him. Loved him, while his real happiness existed somewhere else. I cried so hard that I couldn't breathe. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. I remained there for almost an hour. Eventually, the curtains opened. I saw them eating dinner together. Emma was talking excitedly. Noah was laughing. Claire reached for Daniel's hand. He held it, and then he smiled. The same smile he gave me. I finally started my car. I drove home in complete silence. When I entered my house, I looked around. The living room, the dining table, the photographs. Everything felt empty. For years, I had considered this place our home. Now it simply felt like a stage, a place where I had unknowingly participated in a lie. I sat on the couch and looked at our wedding picture. Then I whispered something I never thought I would say. "I don't know you anymore." A few hours later, Daniel came home. He looked tired. Or perhaps he was pretending again. "Long meeting," he said. I looked at him. At this man who had just eaten dinner with another family, I nodded. "I understand." He smiled. Then he sat beside me. For a brief second, I almost asked him everything. Why? How? Since when? But I stopped myself. Because suddenly I realized something important. I didn't need his explanation. The truth was already sitting in front of me, and for the first time since discovering his secret, I felt something other than sadness. I felt anger. Cold, quiet, powerful anger. The kind that changes people. The kind that makes them stronger. Because I finally understood something. The woman who had discovered the messages yesterday was gone. The woman sitting here tonight was someone entirely different, and although Daniel didn't know it yet, his carefully built world had already started falling apart. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely calm, not because the pain was gone. It wasn't. In fact, it was worse. But something inside me had changed. I had cried. I had suffered. I had questioned everything. Now I wanted answers. More importantly, I wanted the truth. I looked at Daniel sleeping beside me. His face looked peaceful. I wondered how many nights he had slept comfortably while I lived inside a lie. For 12 years, he had hidden another family. 12 years. That wasn't one bad decision. That was thousands of decisions. Thousands of lies. Thousands of moments when he could have told the truth but chose deception instead. I quietly got out of bed. I stood by the window and watched the sunrise. The sky slowly turned orange. I remembered something my mother used to say. The sun rises every day, no matter how dark the night was. At that moment, I didn't understand why I suddenly remembered those words, but they stayed with me. Because maybe this darkness would also pass. Maybe I would survive this. Maybe one day I would breathe without pain again. I heard movement behind me. Daniel had woken up. He smiled. "You're up early." I turned around. "Couldn't sleep." He sat on the bed. "You've looked tired lately." The irony almost made me laugh. I looked tired because of him, because of his lies. Because my entire world had collapsed, yet he sat there pretending to care. "I'll be okay," I said quietly. He nodded. Then he came closer and hugged me. A few days ago, I would have melted into his arms. Now I stood completely still. I felt nothing. That scared me, because love doesn't disappear overnight, but trust does. And without trust, love slowly begins to die. That morning, after he left for work, I did something I never thought I would do. I called my office and requested a week off. I couldn't pretend to be normal. I couldn't sit in meetings while my life was falling apart. I needed time. Time to think. Time to understand. And maybe time to become stronger. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Then I opened the old phone again. This time I paid attention to details. Addresses, names, dates, financial transactions, photographs. I wrote everything down. The more I discovered, the more shocking it became. Daniel had purchased Claire's house 8 years earlier. He paid the mortgage. He paid school fees. He paid for vacations. He even had a separate bank account. I felt sick. Then I opened our financial records. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Our joint savings account was smaller than it should have been. Far smaller. At first, I thought I was mistaken. I checked again. Then again. No, the numbers didn't make sense. I opened older records. My hands began shaking. Over the years, large amounts of money had disappeared. At first, it was only a little. Then more, and more, and more. I suddenly understood. He hadn't only stolen my trust. He had stolen my future. I had worked overtime, skipped vacations, avoided unnecessary expenses. I thought we were saving for retirement. I thought we were building a secure future together. Meanwhile, our money had been supporting another family. I sat there in complete disbelief. I wasn't simply a betrayed wife. I had been used emotionally, used financially, used completely. For the first time since discovering his secret, I felt something dangerous. Rage, real rage. I stood up and started pacing around the kitchen. My hands were shaking. Tears filled my eyes again. I remembered all the things I had sacrificed. I remembered saying no to vacations because money was tight. I remembered delaying medical treatments because we needed to save. I remembered telling myself, one day all this sacrifice will be worth it. No, it had been worth it for someone else, for Claire, for Emma, for Noah, for the family I never knew existed. I sank into a chair. I suddenly felt exhausted. Emotionally, mentally, physically. I didn't know how long I sat there. Eventually, my phone rang. It was Sarah again. I almost ignored it. Then I answered, "Emily." I immediately started crying. There was silence, then she spoke softly. "What's wrong?" I couldn't hide it anymore. I told her everything, the messages. The photographs, the other family, the lies. By the time I finished, I was crying uncontrollably. Sarah was quiet for several seconds. Then she said something unexpected. "Come over." I drove to her house. The moment she opened the door, I hugged her and cried. She held me for nearly 10 minutes. I felt embarrassed. I hated looking weak. But she didn't judge me. She simply listened. After hearing everything, she looked at me. "Emily, this isn't your fault." I wiped my tears. "It feels like it is." "No," she shook her head. "You trusted your husband." "That's not weakness, that's love." I started crying again. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because the person you loved never truly existed." Her words hit me hard. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "The man you loved was honest and loyal. That person isn't real. Daniel created him." I stared at her. Slowly, I realized she was right. The husband I loved was an illusion. A character, a carefully designed version of himself. The real Daniel was someone else entirely. That realization hurt, but strangely, it also brought clarity. Because if the man I loved didn't truly exist, then maybe I wasn't losing my soulmate. Maybe I was losing a lie. Sarah held my hand. "What are you going to do?" I looked down. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." I looked up. She smiled sadly. "You're much stronger than you think." I didn't believe her, not yet, but those words stayed with me. That night I went home. Daniel was sitting on the couch. He looked up. "Where were you?" "With Sarah," he nodded. "You seem distant lately." I almost laughed. Distant. I had discovered his secret family. Of course I was distant, but instead I smiled. "I'm just tired." He looked concerned. "I hate seeing you unhappy." Those words nearly destroyed me because he said them so naturally. So convincingly, as if he actually meant them. I looked into his eyes. I wondered whether he had practiced lying, whether deception had become second nature. Then something inside me became quiet. Very quiet. And suddenly, I stopped wanting answers. Because there was no answer that could justify 12 years of betrayal. No explanation could repair this. No apology could erase it. I looked at him and saw something clearly. This man had taken enough from me. He had taken 12 years, my trust, my dreams, my chance to become a mother, my financial security, my peace. I wasn't going to let him take my future too. That night, after Daniel went to sleep, I sat alone in the living room. I looked at our wedding photograph, then I picked it up. For several minutes, I simply stared at it. The smiling woman in that picture looked happy, hopeful, trusting. She had no idea what awaited her. I gently touched the frame. Then I whispered, "I'm going to save you." Maybe I wasn't talking to the woman in the picture. Maybe I was talking to myself. Because for the first time since everything changed, I realized something. I could survive this. I could rebuild. I could start over. But first, I needed the truth. And I needed justice. I walked upstairs. I opened my laptop. Then I searched for one thing, divorce attorney. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I clicked on the first name. And in that exact moment, the broken wife disappeared. And a different woman began to emerge. A woman who was still hurting, still grieving, still devastated, but no longer helpless. Because pain changes people. and betrayal transforms them. Daniel thought he had married a quiet, trusting woman. He had no idea he was about to meet the strongest version of me. The next morning, I called the divorce attorney. My hand was shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. A woman answered. Her name was Rebecca Morgan. I explained that I needed an appointment. She asked if it was urgent. I looked around my empty living room, then I said quietly, "Yes, I think my entire life has been a lie." She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Come in this afternoon." I spent the next few hours gathering documents, bank statements, tax records, property papers, insurance documents, everything. The more paperwork I collected, the more I realized how carefully Daniel had hidden his double life. But people who lie for years eventually become careless. There were traces everywhere, transfers, unexplained expenses, missing savings, financial records that suddenly made perfect sense. I placed everything into a folder, then I drove to Rebecca's office. She was probably in her early 50s. Calm, professional, kind eyes, she listened without interrupting while I told her everything. The messages, the photographs, the other family, the money. When I finally finished speaking, she looked at me carefully. "How long have you known?" "5 days. And have you confronted him?" I shook my head. "No," she seemed surprised. "Why not?" I thought for a moment, then I answered honestly. "Because I don't want another lie," she nodded slowly. Then she opened a notebook. "Emily, what your husband has done isn't just betrayal. It's deception on an extraordinary level." Hearing someone else say it out loud made everything feel real. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Rebecca leaned forward. "What do you want?" I looked down. I expected myself to say, "I want revenge," but those weren't the words that came. I looked back at her. "I want my life back," she smiled gently. "Good answer." Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I barely recognized. I stopped crying. I stopped questioning why. I stopped asking myself what I had done wrong. Instead, I started preparing. I copied every message, saved every photograph, printed every financial record, made notes of dates and transactions. I became organized, focused, quiet. Daniel noticed the change. One evening, he looked at me strangely. "You seem different," I smiled. "Do I?" "Yes. Maybe I'm just tired," he nodded. But I could tell something bothered him. For 12 years, he had known exactly who I was. I was predictable, open, emotional. Now I was calm, and calm people are difficult to read. For the first time in our marriage, I was keeping secrets too. One afternoon, I sat in my car outside Claire's house. I wasn't there to spy. I was there because I needed to make a decision. Should I tell her, or should I walk away? I watched Emma riding her bicycle. I watched Noah playing basketball. I watched Claire watering flowers. They looked normal, happy, completely unaware. I suddenly saw myself. I saw the woman I had been only 2 weeks earlier. Trusting, loving, completely blind. Tears filled my eyes. No woman deserves that. No one deserves to build their life on lies. I made my decision. I got out of my car. Claire opened the door. She smiled politely. "Can I help you?" For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I said, "Yes." "I think we need to talk about Daniel." The smile disappeared. An hour later, we were sitting in her living room. I showed her everything. At first, she didn't believe me. She thought I was lying. Then she saw our wedding photographs, then our anniversary pictures, then 12 years of evidence. I watched the color leave her face. "No," she whispered, then again. "No," she looked at me. Then back at the photographs. She started crying. I sat there silently. I didn't hate her. How could I? We were both victims of the same man. She covered her face with her hands. The room became quiet. After several minutes, she looked at me. "How long?" 12 years. She stared at me. 12, I nodded. She began crying even harder. I cried too, 2 strangers. 2 broken women, destroyed by one man's lies. Finally, Claire asked, "What do we do now?" I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. Because the truth was no longer my burden alone. 3 days later, it was our wedding anniversary. Daniel came home carrying flowers, white roses, my favorite. I almost smiled at the irony. For 12 years, he had remembered my favorite flowers. yet somehow forgotten honesty. I took the roses. Thank you, he smiled. I made dinner reservations. I shook my head. I cooked, his face brightened. Really, I nodded. Tonight should be special, he smiled. Oh, Emily, I smiled back for the last time. Dinner was quiet, candles burned softly. Music played in the background. It looked perfect, exactly like our marriage had looked. Perfect and completely false. Daniel raised his glass. To 12 beautiful years. I looked at him. Then I raised my glass too. To the truth. He frowned slightly, but he smiled again. After dinner, I handed him a small gift box. I have something for you. He looked surprised. You didn't have to get me anything. Oh, I think I did. He opened the box. Inside were photographs, Claire, Emma, Noah, the other house. His smile disappeared instantly. He froze. For several seconds, he didn't move. Then he looked at me, then back at the photographs, then back at me. He looked terrified. I had never seen fear in his eyes before. Emily, he whispered. I said nothing. He swallowed. I can explain, I laughed softly. It was the first time I had laughed in weeks. No, I said quietly. You can't. He looked pale. I reached into my bag. Then I placed another envelope on the table. He opened it. Divorce papers, financial evidence, bank records, documentation. He looked like he couldn't breathe. Please, he whispered. I looked at him calmly. No, tears filled his eyes. Emily, I shook my head. For 12 years you lied every day. He started crying. I didn't. I had already cried enough. You let me blame myself because we couldn't have children. He closed his eyes. You watched me suffer. Please, you spent our savings. Please, you built another family while I waited for you every night. He broke down completely. But strangely, I felt nothing. Because the man crying in front of me wasn't my husband. My husband had never existed. He was simply a character Daniel played, and the performance was over. I stood up. Then I said the words I had rehearsed 100 times. I deserved honesty. I deserved loyalty. I deserved love. You gave me lies. Then I picked up my purse, and I walked away. The next few months changed everything. Claire left him immediately. She refused to speak to him. Emma and Noah discovered the truth. The children were devastated. They wanted nothing to do with him. Friends learned what happened. Family learned what happened. Colleagues learned what happened. The perfect image he had spent years creating collapsed. The divorce proceedings were difficult. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financially, he lost a significant amount. Personally, he lost even more. One day, he called me. I didn't answer. Then he sent a message. I ruined everything. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted it, because finally, his mistakes were no longer my responsibility. I moved into a small apartment near the ocean. The first night there felt strange. No photographs, no memories, no lies, just silence. I sat on the balcony. The wind felt cool against my face. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply. And it didn't hurt. A few weeks later, I bought flowers. I decorated my apartment. I started reading again, started walking every morning, started sleeping peacefully. Little by little, I started living again. One evening, I found the wooden box where I kept all of Daniel's anniversary notes. I opened it. I read one. I'm the luckiest man alive because I have you. I smiled sadly. Then I closed the box and threw it away because I finally understood something. I wasn't the woman who had been abandoned. I was the woman who survived. I wasn't the woman whose life had been destroyed. I was the woman who rebuilt it. Sometimes betrayal feels like the end, but it isn't. Sometimes it's the painful beginning of a better chapter. I lost a husband. I lost 12 years. I lost the future I thought I would have, but I gained something even more important. I found myself. And after everything I endured, that felt like the greatest victory of all.